Welcome to the Sydney Property Muppets podcast. It is Kurt Lawther, the real estate agent, and with me and forever is always
Chris Clarke, the buyer's agent. I love the energy, Kurt.
Really hope I'm in the frame.
No.
So guys, this is part B on Spotify. We have decided just to give a bit of an intro in case someone does come across it straight away to show that we are very energetic, but also then once we get into the podcast, we do sort of tone it down a little bit just to get out some really good stories and information. So,
Nice.
Chris, what were we talking about in our last episode?
So we continue on with the Day in Life and Auction Buyers Edition. In this one, we talked through previously the pre-auction, so what to do prior to, not having family there, have a number. During the auction, so bidding strategies, good, bad, and the ugly about how to move forward. Now we're dovetailing into nicely post-auction.
Post-auction.
Now I talked a lot last time about the phobia of negotiating after. Before we talk about that scenario, I'd like to pose you, a buyer is at an auction, the property, they bidded, they've been the bridesmaids, they come second, they've lost the auction, they should just get in their car, go home, shut the laptop and begin searching in a week, or what do you think they should do? What's an opportunity? You talk about an opportunity.
So this is a big opportunity, and I'll explain it from a real estate agent's perspective. So sometimes as agents, we're prospecting and we're finding people that are ready to sell their home, they're picking an agent. However, some people, they don't want a campaign. They don't want any of that. They just want someone to come in and buy their home. It's very hard as an agent in terms of when you're door knocking or prospecting I'm a very ethical agent and I will never make up that I've got to buy it if I don't have one.
Yep.
However, the confidence that I have when I do have a hot buyer who's keen, I've seen them bidding at auction, I know that what they say their budget is.
Yep.
Because surprisingly, buyers don't just be like, look, here's our pre-approval. This is our maximum that we can go to. I can then actually...
don't. I know a lot do though. Some do.
I like those people.
I know you do. I do too actually, because it means when they come to me that we're ready to go. Anyway, keep going.
That I can actually knock on a door, and I've done it before where I've gone and... hello, it's Kurt from Shed Property. How are you going? They're like, good. I was like, got 30 seconds. I've got someone who's missed out at auction. They're genuinely keen to buy. Would you be open to selling for the right price? And for me to be able to go into that door, to that cold call in a way sometimes, or even a text message with that confidence that I've got someone.
It's fantastic. Now, so I think I missed a step here. I may have missed it, maybe not. At the end of the auction, they missed out.
Yep.
What do they jump in their car? What are they?
Yes.
What are they doing there?
So that's from the perspective of the agent knowing, and you'll see where this links up, is that don't go home. Speak to the agent. Keep building that relationship.
Stay there, have a chat.
Because that way, that agent is then more likely to do what I was just talking about.
Yeah.
Whereas if you bugger off, sometimes we don't hear from people again. Sometimes and it's just like, I want to help you.
Yeah.
So
I think there's nicely said before about you as a buyer, you'll go through many properties and you'll build some rapport with an agent, but the agent doesn't know if you're going to buy now, in 3 months, in 12 months' time. When they see you bidding an auction, and I see you bidding an auction, I know that likely you're going to buy within the next 3 months. Highly likely, almost unlikely you're not going to do so. So that's where Kurt's saying. If you approach him afterwards and build that rapport, you can describe why you like the property.
Keep building that.
And describe what it is about that property you liked. He'll then be aware of your budget. Like I said, in this scenario, you've been the bridesmaid, so he's aware of where you're up to. That may, as a buyer, you go, that's bad. But in that scenario there, if he actually will have full confidence in approaching the local market and propositioning you, knowing that actually you can't spend above that because you just didn't spend above that.
Yep.
From there. So I think that's a nice way of sort of wrapping up. Now, let's turn it over. So let's imagine auctions occurred. There is one bidder.
Yep.
Only one bidder. But we haven't hit the reserve. Right. What occurs when what's the next steps in terms of one bidder there? They've got the right to do what, Kurt? The buyer, or that potential buyer who's bid the highest amount but not got the reserve. Yeah.
So regardless of the number of bidders, the bidder that has bidded the highest gets the first right to refusal. So it doesn't mean that you're only going to get to you're the one that gets to negotiate for 50 million days. It's just that the auctioneer or agent can come to you and negotiate with you first.
Yeah, you definitely get that chance. Doesn't mean forever,
Yeah.
but you definitely get the first right of refusal. So the agent might come back and go, you've offered 2 million, vendor's looking for 2.2. That buyer says 2 million's my absolute top. You would talk to the vendor and go, look, they're 2 on top. No, it's not going to fit. You then tell the buyer no. And then if there's only other buyers, you might be able to turn to them and have a discussion. The other ones who either haven't bid or whatever else.
Yeah.
But in the initial phase, just that initial phase, they get the first right to have a negotiation or first right to refuse.
Yes, which is why even if no one's moving at an auction, just get a bid in. Get the most acceptable bid in. And obviously, if they're not accepting your budget, like just say you're saying 2 million, that's your maximum budget, and for some reason the auctioneer's like, nah, we need it high. Be like, well then you're not going to win. You're not going to win the property anyway.
I've had scenarios before myself that we've bid at an auction where there's been some other bidders that have died off. We're at a point, and I've had agents literally come over to me going, Chris, you're a bit off. This is during the auction. You need to bid another 50,000 above your current offer. And I look at that agent going, are you nuts? Why am I going to bid during an auction 50 grand above? And I'm genuine about that. I know some people might go, well, I go, well, I've got first right of refusal. I'm an ethical individual. I will actually look at the auction and go, look, we'll make this work, but there's no way I'm going to bid against myself during an auction. I'll happily, after the auction, look at things. And I've done stuff before where I've gone above or we've met a level. Very rarely have I not found a number that's worked. But I'm just not going to bid against myself.
Yeah. So probably
this is the counterpoint.
This is the counterpoint.
Or counter punch.
I'd say counterpoint is we've had auctions where, just say for example, there was 2 people.
Yep.
We knew the second person wasn't going any higher.
Yep.
And to make it a process where we put it to the other party who was already the highest bidder, we took them into the room and said, look, if you jump, they sort of.
I'm talking about during the auction here.
No. This is during. This is during. We're speaking to our vendor and they want a certain number. We go back out. We actually bring the highest bidder into a room, like obviously not with the vendor. We say, look, if we can reach this number at the auction, we're going to knock it down to you straight away. It's done. It's yours.
And I get it. And you and I are very ethical. We do these things right. I think our listeners will look at that going, unfortunately, the industry itself probably not carry itself with the same reputation, and they would have a natural fear, and I would sympathise. I'm not saying the right decision or wrong. I'd sympathise with them going, listen to auction at that point to bid against yourself, but we're definitely going to drop the hammer. The big fear factor is, but what if I have that other number come down, and then something, no one else bids, and then I'm basically paying too much, and then I've got to go in negotiation later and even pay more than that, and the hammer hasn't dropped.
So the hammer hasn't dropped. For me, if an agent's not to his word, walk away.
Yeah, walk away. That would make sense. Look, I had a scenario where we were the only bidder, and the guide price, I think it was 1.5. We turned up, there was other buyers there. We were the only one who actually bid. We bid 1.5, knowing that we'd be the only one, so we got exclusive rights. After the auction, the agent came in and said, trying to ask me what my top number is. Obviously, I'm not going to tell him what my top number is. I said, I've shown you an offer, 1.5. What does it need to be? He said 1.75. That's a big, big swing. Now, we had more money to spend, but we didn't have that. So we went back and forth, this agent and I, over about a 15-minute period. And with my buyer aware of this, we ended up approving up to 1.62 million. The vendor had decreased from 1.75 down to 1.7. So they made some movement, but we had gone up 120, they'd come down 50.
Yeah.
The 1.62 was it. That was our walk-away point. From the beginning of the day to the end of the day, that was our walk-away point. I got in the car and drove away. And the agent has the right then to, I've refused the deal, they've got the right to negotiate anything else. There was no one else to deal with. The agent called me back and said, I've got an offer, and the vendor is now 1.68, let's get a deal done. And I said, no, 1.62. Agent said, well, you need to present the offer, which by legislation I am meant to also present a counter offer back to my client. Apart from what I'd done is I'd already authorised my buyer to say, unless the agent comes back with an offer of 1.62, you authorise me to reject any offer above that.
Yeah.
Which
It's
is
perfectly fine.
Perfectly fine. So I instructed the agent that it happened. Another 15 minutes or 10 minutes went by. Went to Chemist Warehouse, get some things, jumped outside my car, got a call from the same agent. Congratulations, we've got them down to 1.62 at your house. He's happy, we're happy, vendor's happy, so forth. So just scenario there, how it could all, am I saying that always happens? No, but that's a particular scenario.
So just to actually sort of also circle this and round it off in a way is...
I don't know if we're going to round off, I've got another question.
Another question, but you can see with how many different scenarios and how Chris and I can sometimes have differing points, but they're both very valid depending on the situation, is that real estate is not just a game of, it's not just, oh, this is lovely, we get to bid or we get to look at houses. It's a very serious game where it's all about strategy, psychology. A lot of people think, and I'm more so with selling agents at the moment, is that they just get paid to stand at a door and hand out a brochure. It's a very tough game, real estate, and if you're not adept to negotiating or strategy or keeping cool under pressure, you can just see from the stories Chris has told and how dialogue and all that, you can end up costing yourself quite a bit. Or
Yeah.
because someone might have been like, they've come down 1.68 and a non-experienced person might be like, actually, we've got a budget of 1.7.
My buyer could have afforded that. Not for that, they didn't want to spend that for that property, but they could have afforded that. And so you're right, if they were dealing directly, I've got a feeling. Actually, when we did the deal, Hamish, the client, literally said to me, Chris, thank God we had you here because we would have spent probably 1.6 or 1.7. So I've saved them, a nice pat on the shoulder to me, 60, 80 grand off being that middleman. And my fee is not 60 or 80 grand in that scenario.
Yeah. And also from a selling agent point of view, it's like that person, if that had came up just against a normal buyer, they've then in theory won 60 extra grand for their client when he came back and was like, let's get a deal done at 1.68.
Yeah.
But you've managed to drag it down to 1.62. So it's a very complex game, and I think...
I'll give you another complication.
Yeah. Okay.
One more scenario before we wrap things up today. Auction's gone on. There are no bids.
No bids. Yes.
You have 4 registered bidders who are basically indicated through the auction they want to hang around. So they're now hanging around like a bad smell after the auction.
Yep.
You as an agent, or from the agent side, what do you do in that scenario? You've got 4 bidders. So I'm really just talking about multiple bidders, but more than 2, so let's say 4.
Yep.
You've got the vendor who's on site. Where do you put them all? What do you do?
Vendors in one room, probably one of the buyers is in another room. One buyer's on the side of the backyard, another side of the backyard, and one is out the front. And as much as buyers sometimes may think that, oh, this is the position I want, it's not the position.
Look, I think buyers get an impression that, as I just gave that one scenario there before, people listen to that and go, oh, but look at Chris, he did a great strategy. Not every time. With 4 other buyers in other areas, effectively what you're going to have now is a silent auction.
And we actually had this scenario where we actually did have 5 bidders. 5 bidders. One person did actually chuck a bid that wasn't, it was actually below the guide, wasn't good enough. They had first right of refusal. They were out at that number. But then we had the 4 people, and we ended up, because of that, going up, I think it was $300,000-400,000 extra dollars.
Yeah.
And we told people, look, you get to see your competition, who's actually bidding, and it can be done and dusted and be yours. This is going to turn into an auction after the auction. And everyone was like, what do you mean? We explained it, and they were like, nah.
No, because they probably all thought, no, I'll be the only one. If no one, the mindset is, honestly, if no one else is bidding, as a buyer, I can imagine, I've done this before myself, when I did it for myself, your thought process, well, if no one else is bidding, it'll just be me negotiating. Not realising that the guy next to you is thinking the same thing, and the lady over there is thinking the same thing, and the old couple over there is thinking the same thing.
And unfortunately, we are humans. We've got an ego. Is that you think you could not out negotiate a real estate agent, but you think
this is your job.
And I think that's what people.
It's not there. They don't. How often do people buy a house? Maybe every 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, something like that, right? How often do you sell a house? Every 5 days? Every 10 days?
I don't know. It's a lot.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And
so
even if it's not
it's
my property,
exponential
it's
more.
helping out on one of my colleagues' properties.
Whatever it is, it's going to be exponentially more.
Yeah.
Basically, they're going up against, Tom Brady, and they're the college quarterback themselves in the other team. They've got no chance. Tom? All right.
I think that wraps it up.
I just thought also, maybe a topic for another day, auction house. I
Auction.
think this is a very different scenario when you go to an auction house, so you're not at the property itself, and there's 10 properties up for sale. I think there are a few tweaks and a few different mindsets we could talk about another time.
Yeah. Before we get into the
3 quick cues.
Our 3 quick cues. I think the past 2 episodes have been a little bit different, where they've been a little bit more probably story orientated. I think it's just a very key indicator that property is a complex. It's a complex.
Buying at auction is simple, but it's like poker. It's like no Hold'em, Texas Hold'em. It takes a minute to learn, a lifetime to master.
Yeah.
I think an auction is relatively simple.
The process. Highest bidder wins.
But it takes a lifetime to master. Good point. Okay, 3 quick questions. Who's going first? I think you can.
I can go first. Chris.
Do you have one?
Look, off the top of my head,
Let's write that down beforehand.
do you prefer pre-auction, auction, or after auction in terms of negotiation?
If I could, I'd do pre-auction.
Pre-auction.
Yep. Should you register? Very simple one. Should you register for the auction on the day, or is it best practice to do it the day before?
Ask the agent.
Nice. Didn't expect that. Good. Your turn.
Are you an investor in property or stocks?
Property, investment property. Yep. Have you ever had a property you're selling where you genuinely actually looked and crunched numbers to try and either you buy or your family or some sort of shared team, girlfriend, partners, buy?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
I expected a yes, but that's okay. That's good.
No.
Next one.
God, actually,
I'm saying personal here, big fella.
I was like, what is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear, I think it'll be it's probably an obvious one, but just my kids' happiness, my kids having a long, having their life cut short or something. It's a sad one, but that's the one that comes to mind.
Fair enough.
Talking about kids or younger life, more younger kids. What was your highest ever cricket score?
71 not out.
You know it. Very good. Well, as we always say, our advice is general in nature. Please talk to the experts. Reach out to Kurt, myself, here on the Sydney Property Markets, or She Property, or
Sydney Property Muppets.
Sorry, did I say different?
Markets.
Oh, did I?
I wasn't sure what you're talking about.
Sydney Property Markets. Or Clarke Buyers Agents would love to have a chat. But otherwise, thank you for dropping by, and we'll look forward to you coming along next week.
Perfect. Also, in case you didn't hear, it was Shed Property. Come on, Chris.
Shed Property.
Get there.
Like, subscribe, tell a friend about it. We're trying to get this subscribed. We're up to 9 at the moment on YouTube.
Yep.
We're pretty happy with that. We're early days. We're looking for double digits.
Thank you genuinely to anyone that listens, pays a little bit of attention, because we generally want to make this process of buying and selling and just understanding the market as simple as we can. And the more people that listen, then the better people have an understanding.
Yeah. And for those who do subscribe, and got to this end of the podcast, enjoy the merch. Nothing you can buy, but just enjoy it. All the best.